Everybody, for the meeting for the Bastrop Economic Development Corp. It's 5 o'clock still in the afternoon. Bill Gossett, Secretary Treasurer. I'm presiding over this meeting because of the removal of Catherine Nash. She has been removed by the City Council after her 5 years of service on the board here. And so I thank her for her work and everything that she has done over her term here. But under that and the bylaws of the BEDC, there's a second clause that refers to a council member cannot serve both on the City Council and on the board of BEDC. So you can't be a chair or vice chair. And so based on that, congratulations to Kevin for being on the City Council, but that excludes him from being vice chair. And so as last one standing, I'll start the meeting today. And so again, welcome everybody here today. So I think one of the questions was there any public comments and things?
I don't have any public comments.
Okay.
But thank you.
So there are no public comments. And based on the situation that we're in currently and lacking the executive group filled out, what I'd like to do is start with the first item of business related to the consideration, discussion, and possible actions on election of BEDC officers, the chair, the vice chair, and I've also put it in there as Secretary Treasurer to again consider where we're at, and we can move through the selections in that order. So let's begin with the chair. Are there nominations for anybody to be chair?
Well, seeing as, as of today, I'm the senior member on the board, I guess I'm going to volunteer to be the chairperson for this term because we're going to be coming up in, September, I believe, for new board members. So I will take on that one and nominate myself as the senior member.
Second. Are there any other nominations to consider? Jeff? Jen?
In terms of this,
Sorry.
I'm actually going to put my head in the ring for the vice chair.
Okay.
Second that myself.
Okay.
We can do it both.
Connie, any comments?
I appreciate Mr. Spencer. He is the senior member, and I appreciate with Kevin and I not eligible for those officer positions, and it's great to have directors that are willing to serve. So I think both of those motions and seconds are great.
Okay. So let's begin with the first, the chair. It was proposed by Ron. It was seconded by Kevin. So without further discussions, we go for a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any against? No? Let it be known, a unanimous decision is Ron as the chair. I will hand it over to you now. You can then complete the rest of the fill out of the board as required.
We have a second for the vice chair as well, right? So let's go ahead. If there's any discussion on that? If not, let's all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? None opposed. Motion carries. So, Jen, you're the vice chair now.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Congratulations to you both.
Okay. Well, if we're finished with 3.1,
Secretary and Treasurer?
we definitely need the secretary and treasurer. And actually,
I have not stepped down.
you're right, you haven't. That's great.
So, and unless you need me to. No? Okay.
No way.
All right.
Thank you anyway.
I'm good.
I was just listening to Jeff over here. All right. All right. I would like to move to 3.3 instead of 3.2, if that's all right. I think we'd like to maybe talk a little bit about that in executive session. Charlie, is that something that we can do? Since we reserve the right to change any agenda item to move it to executive session? 3.2? I want to go to 3.3. You want to go to 3.3? Yeah. For what purpose? I would like to have that discussion in executive session before we talk about it out here.
The minutes, they approved.
3.2.
Oh, 3.2, okay, because that's next on the agenda, I don't know why I'm so confused, yes, we can do that.
Okay, thank you.
So, you would just announce, consultation with attorney, I think it is, yeah. Now it is? Okay. Consultation with attorney, I'm assuming?
I'd like to have consultation with the attorney on 3.2 before we
so-
talk about it out here.
Yes, sir, and then it just announced the time that we go into closed session.
Yeah, will do. All right, we're going to go ahead and take up 3.3, approval of the meeting minutes from the regular BEDC board meeting of January 24th, 2022, and the special BEDC board meeting on February 7th, 2002. Do we have a motion to approve those minutes?
Move to approve.
Any
Second.
Okay, any discussion? All right, all in favor of approval, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? No opposed, the motion carries. All right. Section 3.4, acceptance of financial report provided by the City of Bastrop's Chief Financial Officer for the period ending January 2022. So do we have that report?
Chair, so do you mind doing 3.2 now? We have council present and.
I'm happy to wait.
Okay, all right,
Just let me know what you want to do.
okay. Then I'm fine if she's fine.
So do we have a presentation on the financial report?
Yeah, from the financial report, they have been provided by Tracy and her group, and they provided into the packet, pages 13 through 19, I believe, and no particular anomalies or anything there with respect to the report. However, there's another topic that's come up that I think it fits in with the finance part. I was contacted by our bank, First National Bank of Bastrop, that the city had requested an update of the signatures for the account. And so out of that, it identified activities to be done, and the activities that were done was the BEDC director was removed as a signator. The treasurer of the BEDC board was removed as a signator, and in their place was put the city manager, and Tracy Waldron continued as a signator. They were both identified as officers, and then later on the form we identified that as an officer of the BEDC, it actually requires two signatures, and in this case they both need to be officers of the BEDC, not of the city.
Who was it that removed the signatures?
It was out of the request that Tracy's here. It was out of the request of Tracy, and I've talked to the position at the bank, and they said yes, these need to be updated. They were last
Yes,
updated
they
in
were.
2019,
So Sam was on it, and I just removed Sam.
but so was Cameron Cox. He was on it.
Yes,
And so out of that, and Paul was not on it, but then Paul was added.
well, Paul wasn't here when we did the last signature.
Well, neither was
So
any city manager.
these are the signatures for the checks, which we hardly ever do checks. We pay a lot by EFT or draft. I just needed to get it updated to get who was expired off of there. And then we can come back with a new one as soon as we have some people in place in order to put them on there. We didn't want to add Janora because she was an interim, so we were waiting for a permanent director to put on there.
Okay. So after reviewing that with the bank and then also having it reviewed it with our legal counsel, what I will do is I will go back to the bank. I will request the update of the signatures for our accounts for the BEDC. And in those accounts, it would continue with Tracy as an authorized signator, myself as an authorized signature as the treasurer. It will include Janora as an authorized signature as the director CEO. And then ultimately that will be signed by 2 officers of the BEDC, which would be, Ron and myself, or even Jen and myself can do that.
That's fine.
And so after we've done that, we'll look at that. The other aspect of that is it identifies as the number of signatures required for a transaction, and those are only requiring one transaction, one person to sign. And again, because I've studied it, haven't seen it before, and we pulled it down, I looked at the 2019 version as well, and I said at that point it's an opportunity for the board to consider whether they would like to have 2 persons or 1 person sign for the outflows of money from the BEDC. And it could go either way, chair and committee, or it could go with 2 signatures for any amounts over X. We could define that as well. So I kind of have it open for discussion. If if everybody's in agreement that I'll follow up with the bank, I can do that. The only thing I would like to do is have a clarification whether we want to have 2 signatures on an outflow or a large outflow.
Well, it's going to be 1 or 2 signatures of officers of the corporation is what you're saying, right?
Well, it
Or
would be
anybody that is on the approved signature list.
Well, the signature list would be Tracy and myself and Janora. But right now, it currently only requires 1 signature to execute a disbursement or deposit or so forth.
Okay.
The question is, you can have that as 2 persons.
You can, but just remember, we don't do a lot of checks, and that's the only time that comes into effect. Also, we don't do real signatures. We use an electronic signature. I put a code in, my accounts payable puts a code in. We only pay what y'all have submitted to be paid. So at that point, it's approved. All we're doing is just,
Executing it.
yes, pushing the money out.
Right.
So I can do the application, I can get the backup that's required by the bank, I do that all the time, if you would prefer that I take care of that for you.
No, I can take care of that and identify it, because again, when you read the top section of that application, it actually refers to a resolution adopted by the board of directors of the corporation executing this. And in this case, A, that never happened, and B, honestly, the signatures at the bottom should be the BEDC and not the city at this point. So I'll follow up with Angelica and do that.
I mean, if you're asking for discussion, I think just having 1 signature would be just fine, because, I mean, everybody's busy these days, and like you just said, we don't really sign a lot of checks, so I would propose that we just go with 1.
Okay, sounds good. I can take care of that tomorrow.
Thank you. All right. Let's go ahead and do that then. The attorneys, which one?
That's the 2, right? 3.2. What do we skip?
No, but we're going to talk about that. We want to talk about that.
Yeah, we can go to executive now.
Oh, we can? All right. I'd like to go ahead and go into executive session right now so that we can talk about a few things before we come out and finish, and then we won't have a lot of people waiting. Oh, yes.
We'll need to know exactly which section we're going under and
Yes.
and then what section, if it's attorney-client consultation.
Okay, we're going to be going into 4.1. The Bastrop EDC Board of Directors will meet in a closed executive session pursuant to the Texas Government Code, Chapter 551, to discuss the following. Number 1, Section 551.074, personal matters, discussion on chief executive officer position. Section 4.2, the Bastrop EDC Board of Directors will reconvene into open session to discuss and consider any action taken necessary after that.
Are we also going to go in under 3.2?
Yes, we're going to go in under 3.2, sorry.
For
yes.
attorney-client consultation?
For attorney consultation, thank you. I'm sorry? Oh, yes, 3.2 is approval of resolution R-2022-0003, authorizing severance payment to former executive director pursuant to employment agreement. On page 4. And the time? Right now it's 5:15. Okay. All right, it is now, thank you. You'll need to vote to accept the, oh, yes. Okay. Yeah, it is now 6:11, Monday, February 28th, and we will reconvene into open session to discuss, consider, and take any actions necessarily related to the executive sessions noted herein. There were no decisions made in the executive director, so we'll continue on with the open section. And to finish up with section 3.4,
Dot four.
acceptance, oh, sorry,
Four.
3.
Two, no, we're talking about something else that he was referring to. Going
Right.
back to 3.4, the financials.
Right, yeah, so I'd like to have a motion on the approval of the financial presentation.
Yeah, sorry, we didn't manage that, but I move that we approve the financials as presented.
Second.
All right, so any discussion therein? Very good, then all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Okay. All right, I forgot what we were going to do on that. Okay. Oh, 3.2, approval of resolution R2022-003, authorizing severance payment to former executive director pursuant to employment agreement. Do we have a motion on that?
I move to approve R 2022-0003.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All right. Any discussion? All right, all those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? The motion carries. All right. Moving on to section 3.5, presentation by City Manager Paul Hoffman regarding the Bastrop City Council's policy regarding the Bastrop Economic Development Corporation. Hello there, Mr. City Manager.
Hello, Chair Spencer. Congratulations, and thank you, Board, for taking up this item. We were here last month at your January 24th meeting to give you an update on where the City Council was in developing a policy resolution for the purpose of providing policy direction from the City Council to the BEDC. The City Council met on February the 8th and adopted the policy that is before you this evening. There's been quite a bit of discussion about this, but just real briefly on the process we went through last fall. The city decided to engage the services of a Mr. Joe Esch of Esch Development Services, and we asked him to facilitate a process for creating that policy direction. The intent of that policy direction was for the City Council to do their part in achieving this alignment between the objectives of the City of Bastrop and the EDC by creating some policy direction. That policy, as it was adopted by the Council on February the 8th, is in your packet, and I will summarize it for you thusly. There are several things in this policy direction. One is that I think it does a good job of recognizing and respecting the different roles of the BEDC and the City Council here. It does create an expectation that there will be multi-year strategic plans conducted by the BEDC and annual business plans as well, and that those would be presented to the City Council. It does expect the creation of a policy on measurable goals as well as a consistent return on investment analysis in support of those goals. There is a expectation that there will be coordination at the staff level on all projects and information sharing accordingly. There's a section in the policy that deals with administration, where there is an expectation of the documentation of process. There's a provision for joint meetings as necessary. And related to the other item on your agenda this evening, it generally describes services that reasonably would be provided by the city council, by the city to the BEDC, and the specifics of that, again, are in agenda item 3.6, which speaks to a support services agreement, which I can speak to when we're on that agenda item. And so, happy to answer any questions, happy to continue to work with BEDC staff and the board as we move forward here. I do appreciate the city council's work. They took this very seriously, and I think they gave some good thought to this policy direction, which they did adopt on February the 8th. Can I answer questions?
Any questions?
I actually have a question related to the administrative support services. At some time, will we be given a schedule of fees associated with that? If we're going into the budget process related to projects and we're leveraging the administration costs provided by the city, it would be nice to have some kind of fee card associated with that so it can be incorporated into the budget.
Yes, ma'am. Actually, on that is more specific to item 3.6, which speaks to that support services agreement, and that agreement that is on the agenda for your approval this evening. There is a description of the fees that I think would be sufficient for budget development, and it's Exhibit A that's attached to the proposed support services agreement.
Yeah, again, looking at the administration, section 8, subsection B, where it defines a point of contact where the BEDC Board of Directors individually are acting through BEDC Director are to coordinate with the city through the Office of the City Manager. Can you explain a little bit of how that is expected to be fulfilled? For example, if I have a question related to the finance, and we've met with Tracy and deal with Tracy, do I need to go through you in order to do that?
I think the point of this is to have an understanding so that the city manager has an understanding and is aware of what those conversations about. I certainly understand that the BEDC treasurer would from time to time need to coordinate with the city's CFO, and I wouldn't have a concern about that. I think, and to your question, I think that gets to the point of that provision in administration. You're coordinating with me. That does not mean at all that I need to be a part of every conversation.
So phone calls to Tracy and clarifying
That'd be absolutely
things?
fine.
No issue. Angela, the staff?
Absolutely not. Okay. But it is, I think, a responsibility I have to have a sense of what is going on in that regard. Mm-hmm. Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you for clarifying.
Do we have any other questions from the board? No.
Presentation by City Manager Paul Hoffman regarding proposed support services agreement between BEDC and the City of Bastrop.
Thank you, sir. And this item, as I mentioned earlier, is generally described in the policy document This item is on your agenda for approval. This as well, what
No,
is?
it's not. It's only on for
Oh,
presentation.
I'm sorry. Okay. At some point, we would ask the board to approve it. So, okay. If you're not posted to do that tonight, then so be it. The city and the BEDC has had a support services agreement between the two entities for quite some time. The most recent agreement has expired, and so there has been a need to replace it. The agreement that's being presented to you this evening is formatted a bit differently from what had been the practice before. Hopefully this reads more clearly, at least I think it does. Most of the provisions regarding the services provided by the city aren't different from the traditional services the city has been providing. Financial services, IT support services, human resources services are the same as they have been. There are two important differences, however, in terms of how all of this is handled compared to the past. One is, according to this agreement, the city would perform management services for capital improvement projects that are funded with EDC dollars. And we are also suggesting a different approach to the funding agreement for the funding of the Main Street program. That is different from what the board had submitted a couple of months ago. And that actually, this does track more closely to the provisions of the agreement for funding of Main Street that what we had before all of that. The provisions there are that we're currently working with a $50,000 annual number. That $50,000 number is subject to change through the annual budget process, but we are treating that $50,000 as a baseline, and the number has been at $50,000 for a few years. And while the board suggested that $50,000 be directly associated with specific line items in the city budget, and that the city would request a reimbursement for services and present those expenses on a quarterly basis for reimbursement. What has been adopted by the City Council is a description of the kinds of services that are being provided here for the Main Street program that have an economic development benefit, and that these transfers be handled administratively on a month-by-month basis. As I've mentioned, go ahead.
May I ask you a question about that? Okay, so
Sure.
being fairly new to this, in terms of like the Main Street program, so are you proposing an itemization of actually what is going to occur and the amounts of that? I mean, is that going to be provided?
We are certainly happy to provide reports on how the Main Street programs are going to the board. What we are not suggesting is a specific itemization that ties back into specific line items in the city budget for that. We are not.
But if we're providing the $50,000 in fee, wouldn't we want some detail related to
Sure.
what that's actually being spent on?
I think what's fair and reasonable is for you to hear reports from the city about how those expenditures support business expansion and retention in the Main Street District, how they provide support for the BEDC Corporation and community in its entrepreneurial and small business programs, and how that will assist with business recruitment in the Main Street District.
Right.
How we will continue to collaborate on training in small business resources, collaborate to market the Main Street District and its assets, inclusive of branding of sponsored events. That is the language that's in the agreement, and I think That is an appropriate kind of understanding between the city and the BEDC about what it is we're trying to accomplish with the Main Street program.
Right, and I understand that, because I was looking for more clarity on, like, the successes of what came out of that. That's a lot of pieces, and so with $50,000, what did it actually go to?
We are, just like I did last fall in a budget workshop with the BEDC board, and I think this was prior to you serving on the board, we are very happy to talk about the Main Street program's accomplishments and what that has to do with economic development. What we're not so happy to do is be too concerned about line item detail. I frankly think that is a level of overview here that is not necessary in order for us to accomplish our objectives. And that is how this draft agreement is crafted.
Okay. I think, Paul, I respect your point of view with that, and I think from a general practice of the Main Street program, I think that is appropriate. However, there are certain legal obligations that we have in order to be able to be responsible for our money and the monies of the BEDC, and there are restrictions on what we can and cannot spend our money on, as I think you have been made aware of before. And some of them are related to we cannot be paying salaries of individuals in the BEDC, and some other things I defer to Charlie when we do the final review that may require certain disclosing of expenditures and how they are done. So we may have to make sure that we have certain aspects of that clear from a financial point of view, so that your activities have not created a violation of the BEDC on how money is spent.
So by all means, get your legal counsel to review this. This was, for whatever it's worth, city legal counsel did review this document. And I think this might be helpful. On page 2 of the agreement that was adopted by council, it goes on to say funding amounts will be within the parameters established by Texas Local Government Code for promotional purposes. And here's the key phrase to answer your question, and shall not be spent on personnel.
Understood. But in general, what I would expect is being responsible for our finances and our legal aspects of the money that is provided to the BEDC from the tax revenue.
We would not expect otherwise.
There
Absolutely.
are expectations that we are responsible for our monies, and we should maintain that. So again, after review, there may be some things that you would be asked to provide to ensure that we're compliant.
Happy to do it.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
I'm a little confused about the Main Street program part of it. This is a services agreement for services that the city provides to the BEDC. Does the BEDC have a Main Street program?
The city has a Main Street program.
Okay, so a services agreement is for services that the city provides to the BEDC that it needs. If the BEDC does not have a Main Street program, then that's not a service that the city is providing to the BEDC. So the Main Street program part of this is probably not appropriate to be in this agreement. We should probably have a separate agreement, because it would be a project that the BEDC would like to fund that the city is doing, and it would be better and more appropriate to have a separate agreement for that.
Okay, happy to receive that input at this point in the process.
Well, again, that's how it started. So again, the original was clarified, which we had reviewed and had been reviewed and offered.
Well, nobody sent me this agreement until I
months
got
ago.
it signed.
Months
Okay.
ago, there was an agreement specifically from the BEDC to the city manager.
Yes.
On specifically the city of Bastrop receiving money from the BEDC for the Main Street program. And there was no response from the city for that for months.
Okay, well, I
and
was
then
involved
this
in
was
it.
incorporated, and this has been incorporated into this.
Right, I wasn't involved in
And so that's
any-
the history.
yeah, okay, I wasn't involved in any of that
Right.
process, but these services agreement are for the purposes of complying with Texas law that says the city cannot provide any services to the BEDC without being paid for providing those services. And that's why I was a little confused that the Main Street program was part of this, because I didn't realize that the BDC had a Main Street program that the city was handling on their behalf. And so now I understand it's the city's Main Street program, and so that should be part of a separate agreement whereby it's because it's a project, and it's a legitimate project under your statute, under the statute, but it should be a separate agreement.
And if we need to create a separate agreement, we're happy to do that.
But we can get into that later.
Yeah, and if, I guess as a board member, my expectation would have been if when we voted on the proposed contract, that it had been reviewed by council. So we should just make a habit.
It was reviewed. It was a separate individual agreement. It was reviewed. Catherine did make sure that that was reviewed and. Right.
Yeah, no, what I was saying, this
one is different.
This particular agreement, I did not see until after I was provided
Correct.
an executed copy that was executed by
That's
the city.
correct.
And the staff did provide it to legal counsel for review before the board voted on it, and then we provided the signed document to Mr. Hoffman in October. And just for point of clarification, there is an active service agreement. It was signed in October of 2021. It is not expired.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, any other questions on this 3.6? Okay, then we'll move on to 3.7.
Thank you.
All right, presentation, discussion, and possible action on Resolution R-2022-004 of the Bastrop Economic Development Corporation authorizing renewal of agreement with the retail coach.
Good evening, Board. I wanted to introduce Aaron Farmer. Some of you know him, some of you do not. We have been working with the retail coach for a lot of years. They've been a great partner for our community and have been a great asset to generate retail and restaurant opportunities for our community. So I would like to turn it over and not take much time because he's got a lot to share with you, but Aaron Farmer with the retail coach.
Thanks, Gene. It's great to be in front of you. Like we said, I recognize, know some of you. It's nice to meet you. We have had a great partnership with Bastrop, with the EDC for 10 years now, I think. So I think this would be the 10th year if we get to continue working with you. And we might have missed a year in between there before. But really want to talk to you about retail recruitment and a development strategy for the community and what that means. So I'll go through this pretty quick, but just to give you all a little bit of background on the company, especially the newer members, a little bit of background on our company. So at the Retail Coach, we've been doing this for over the last 21 years. So I'm based here in Austin. Have been to Bastrop. I was trying to count on my way here today. I would bet just for projects, just for meeting with staff, just with meeting with potential developers, brokers, I probably have made 25 to 30 visits to Bastrop in the last 10 years at least, right, Angela? So, know this community very well. Fast-growing community. I think back to 10 years ago, town of about 6,000, if I'm not mistaken. Burleson Crossing had that retail was there, but then when I drive through now, there's so many different things happening. It looks different, but we work all over the country. But Texas is our home base. So born and raised here in Texas, like I said, work out of our Austin office. This is what our project team looks like. This project team has been a part of this Bastrop project for years. I'm the project lead, so I'm the one that's out here on a regular basis. Kelly Kofer, he's been involved in a lot of the projects here as well. Kyle Kofer has been out here, I would bet 10 times at least during the project. And then we've got other support staff. But what we do is we focus on retail. We focus on our Retail 360 process. What is that? What is that opportunity here? What does it look like for Bastrop from a retail standpoint? I speak at a lot of the Texas Municipal League conferences, a lot of the Texas Economic Development conferences. Mayor, I know I've seen you at many of those, and I almost always have a slide on Bastrop. And the reason for that is for a town the size of Bastrop, you have more retail than if you just look at the city limits, you shouldn't have this much retail. So if we're being honest here. But you have such a pool. People from miles and miles, and we'll talk about, come to Bastrop to shop, to eat. to do those sort of things. And that's what we look at, is what are those opportunities? What does that retail trade area look like? So to give you an example of that, I usually ask who has a cell phone, or I used to ask that. Everybody has a cell phone now. But if you have a cell phone, it's kind of scary to think about, but you're being tracked. So as you walk into HEB, as you walk into Walmart, as you walk downtown, if you've ever felt like you're being tracked, you are. The good news is, the way that we do it, we're not selling that data, we're not getting it. We just use it to see where your customers are coming from and how far people are driving in. So if you have a cell phone, if anybody has a cell phone that's shopping or eating here, and you have one of about 5,000 apps on your phone, then we're able to tell where you came from. Okay, so what is your home location? Where do you live? So again, we're not using that data for anything else but to see where people come from. So I wanted to show you this, but this is a heat map. So this is using a cell phone analysis for the last 12 months at Burleson Crossing. Burleson Crossing has a huge draw. People come from long distances to shop and eat there. So the red on the map here, and I know it's a little bit hard to see, this is where your customers are coming from. So if you see it on here, you've got Giddings to kind of the east here, LaGrange to the southeast, almost to Columbus, but down to like Flatonia, and even into Austin, that are coming to shop, real East Austin, coming to shop and eat here on a regular basis. I will tell you this, the last 2 years, so we all know what's happened during the last 2 years, COVID, our spending habits, our behaviors, those sort of things have changed. I noticed something as I ran this yesterday, getting ready for the presentation. Your trade area has grown even more over the last 2 years. So one area that I pointed out here, and I don't, does this have a, okay.
What do you want to highlight?
Oh, wow. I need to get one of these. So right here, where I've got that circle over Gonzales, you're pulling people from Gonzales that are shopping and eating in this community. Now, they're not coming here maybe every day, but maybe on the weekends or those sort of things. So your trade area, specifically to the south, and I really haven't dove in far enough to see what other areas that your trade area has grown, but it's time to update the data. So we're working with the developer right now that's asking us for fresh data on the market, those sort of things. So I wanted to point that out because this is the type of data retailers, restaurants, developers want to see nowadays. I actually, when we started here about 10 years ago, we did license plate studies. You remember that, Angela? I hated it. We would have to drive through your parking lots with these cameras on our cars. And it was like the Google, if you've seen the Google Earth cars going around, that was, I make other people do that now, but no, we don't, luckily we don't do that. Cell phone analysis, but we would see where are these people coming from with their license plates? And that's how we would determine the trade areas. We would also look at radials and drive times, so computer models to see where people are coming from. And you just can't do that here. In Bastrop, your trade area extends literally 60 miles in other directions, and not as far towards Austin. So with Bastrop, we can't use these computer models. So now we're using the cell phone analysis. So that being said, I ran just some numbers on the cell phone analysis, something I wanted to point out to you. So Burleson Crossing, so looking at that development there, you had 423,000 unique customers shop at Burleson Crossing over the last 12 months. That's huge. 423,000 consumers. Here's the kicker. Those 423,000 consumers made 3 million visits. So you've got a lot of repeat business that's happening, that's coming to shop and eat here. That's what retailers want to see. So gone are the days where we can just go to a community, or we can just go to a retailer or developer and say, hey, Bastrop's a great town. We want you to come here. Now we've got to have these metrics. So this is what we're sharing with them, but the numbers look good. Another kicker, so the Bastrop zip code of 78602 only represents about 8% of your customers at Burleson Crossing. So 92% of your consumers are coming from outside of the Bastrop zip code there. Is there only one zip code for Bastrop? Okay.
Yes, and it's really interesting because the zip code is bigger than the city limits.
Yeah. So if we even look at that, even a lesser percentage of your consumers are coming from the city. So that just goes to show why you really got to take a deeper look at this market. So every time when I give those TML presentations, I say, look, a town of 9,000 has a trade area of 208,000. And that blows people away.
That's also when you and I visit with the retailers, they think that we're lying and crazy. Because our retail area is like bigger than some small states in the Northeast, and they think
it really is. They can't believe it when they see it. And honestly, I can't think of a community like this in the state. There's a few in West Texas that have really large draws, area-wide, but not this many people that are coming in. So anyways, this is what the trade area looks like. So Welder to the south, Schulenburg to the south, Round Top to the east is kind of and Carmine is kind of the stop there. Lexington to the north. So you're pulling people to the north to Lexington. Like I said, kind of that Mustang Ridge, kind of east side of Austin, Creedmoor area, you're seeing come to Bastrop. So real quick, just some updated numbers for 2021. The population of that trade area is just under 209,000. 208,950. Here's the thing, 2022 data is out. So as soon as we get the go-ahead, or hopefully if we get the go-ahead to keep working with you for another year, we'll update that data with 2022 data. The other thing that we really want to focus on is the projected growth in this trade area. We're expecting a lot of growth over the next 5 years, as evidenced by all the housing happening within this trade area here, new housing coming in. So we're gonna look at that, and then your average household incomes continue to increase. So when we first started this process, the average household incomes were in the 70s. Does that sound about right? Maybe high 60s, low 70s. Average household incomes have continued to grow. We're at 86,000 there. And then the other kind of kicker here that was interesting is your median and average age. Median age is at 37. Angela, remember, it was over 40 when we first started working out here. So why does that matter? Retailers, restaurants, they look for younger populations. Younger people don't save their money, they spend their money. So retailers obviously like that part of it.
That's why they live with older people.
Exactly. So retail demand outlook is something we're going to look at as well. So we look at roughly 80 sectors. So any type of retail sector, so whether it's casual sit-down restaurants, fast food restaurants, sporting goods, whatever it might be, there's going to be a sector, and we look at what is the demand today, and then we project what that demand will be 5 years down the road. Why that's important? Retailers, developers that are looking to come to a community, they want to come to communities that are growing, and y'all are growing pretty rapidly, as you can see up there. Your compound annual growth rate for the entire retail industry in Bastrop is growing at about 3.27%, and that's a compound annual growth rate. So that's significant growth for the area compared to others. We also focus a lot on sites. So when we're going to a retailer or restaurant, we don't just say, hey, we'd love to, or developer, we don't just say, hey, we'd love to have you come to Bastrop. We say, look, here's sites that fit what you're looking for. So we've got a restaurant that we know was announced recently that is coming here. We help provide sites to that restaurant. We also target restaurants, retailers, developers that fit the community. So in order for a prospect to be a fit for Bastrop, you have to meet their criteria or their requirements for trade area, demographics, average household income, you name it. So it's time. It's time to update the mix. I was looking through, let me get to it here. I was looking through, this is kind of this is our portal where we keep track of all of the retailers and restaurants that we update there. A lot of them are either locating or are already looking at sites, so we need to expand it a little bit, come up with some new prospects there, just because you're growing. There's opportunity for retail. There's new retailers. There's new restaurants out there, and we need to focus on that. I skipped over the slide, but we also develop marketing materials. So we'll represent Bastrop, the EDC, to potential retailers, restaurants, developers at these trade shows, and we want to make sure we have the marketing materials that share that information. So those shows that I'm talking about, these retail trade shows, this is where you go to meet with retailers, restaurants, developers. We set meetings up ahead of time with these prospects. You can kind of see what our booth looks like at these conferences. It's not just a trade show where you just kind of go sit and wait for people to come to you. There's a strategy that we put together for Bastrop, people we meet with, those sort of things. So the last year, there were really only 2 shows that we went to. COVID kind of messed that up again last year. So we went to Retail Live, which was in Austin, where we met with a lot of retailers and restaurants. That was in September. And then we went to ICSE, their new Here We Go conference in December. That was in Vegas. It's hard to believe, but we have more conversations about Texas and Vegas than we do any other state. So you got to go to Vegas to have a conversation. Sometimes with brokers that are in Austin, doesn't make sense, but it works and it happens. ICSE Red River Conference in Dallas is coming up at the end of March. So that's always a big one. Didn't happen the last 2 years because of COVID, but that's happening again in Dallas. That's an important one. And then ICSE in Vegas, largest retail real estate conference in the world. That happens in May. And then Retail Live, again, will happen in September, and that's the local one. That's the one in Austin. The thing I like about that one, a lot of the regional players, P. Terry's, some of these other regional prospects that are out there, they're at that conference as well, not just the national ones. And then we're always here. So I'm sure your staff can tell you this, but if there's a special project that's needed, if there's a special report, we've run cell phone reports on a certain weekend so that we can get information to a prospect. We can do that. Data updates as they're needed. We provide monthly recruitment updates. I actually think, Gene, don't we have, our conference calls are every 2 weeks, right? So we have updates every 2 weeks with staff. And just want to make sure y'all know what's going on at all times. We are competing with other communities in the region, obviously. Anything that we can do, anything that y'all can do to speed up the process, get the information these prospects need, that's what they want to see, and that's how these things happen. So what we're asking for today, or what we proposed today, is just a renewal of our agreement. So it's the same price as it's been the last several years, $14,500, split into 2 payments. So this is a 12-month partnership. Like I mentioned, the cell phone analysis, we'll do those updates. We run those on just about every business in town. We will update the reports, so the demographic reports, the trade area reports, everything that go with that. I put in there 12 months of aggressive recruitment. And when I say aggressive recruitment, what that means is we're not just calling on the phone or sending emails. We're meeting with these prospects in person. And anytime you can get face-to-face or we can get a prospect to the market, Bastrop really sells itself. Let them just see how much traffic there is out on 71, or let them see how busy HEB is at 10 a.m. on a Wednesday morning. It speaks for itself. Regular project updates, like I talked about, every 2 weeks. Retail trade show representation, and then on-demand reports and special projects. But it's been a great partnership. At least we feel it has. I mean, y'all staff has been great to work with. The board has been great to work with, and excited about continuing that.
I've got a question for you, if you
Sure.
don't mind. What's your conversion rate from your involvement with the conferences and stuff like that? So how many leads for Bastrop have you obtained in the last, let's just say, 3 years?
Sure.
And then actually, how many of those leads actually converted to sale? Okay.
So I don't know the exact numbers off the top of my head. Retail is an interesting game in that you have to talk to a lot of retailers and restaurants in order to get the right one, if that makes sense. But what we try to do is we try to be very targeted in who we go after. So if we're able to get a meeting with a retailer, we're able to get a meeting with a restaurant to the market, I would like to say it's probably 20 to 30% success rate within the first 3 years of actually talking to them coming in. It just depends. I mean, we try to target. Okay, we try to target those that we know fit the criteria. So if we go to a retailer, we go to a restaurant, and say Bastrop's a fit, you have to hit all of those benchmarks or those criteria. So there's a good chance if we talk to them, they're going to locate. So I looked back in 2012, or no, I think it was 2013. We had our first initial retail match list. So those are the retailer fits that are on there. There's about 25 on that list, and today there's 15 that have located in this community. So I don't know what that turns out from a success rate standpoint, but we try to be very targeted so that we're going after the ones that fit.
Right, I would actually like to see the actual numbers at some point.
Sure.
Because it's basically a testament to the success of the program that
Absolutely.
you're asking us to renew, right?
Sure.
And so just like any good business deal, I want to know what your conversion rate is.
That's a great point,
right?
yeah.
I was just
We can
gonna,
do that.
Yeah, I was just going to add kind of a little bit. Our industry projects, they don't happen overnight, right? Retail is the same way. I can give you a couple of just real quick examples. The Panda Express, believe it or not, took them 6 years from the time that they started talking to us to actually picking a site and putting a building on the ground. The Academy was, I believe, 7 years that it took for us to get to a place where they were confident and comfortable to choose a site and put a building on the ground. And so that's why he's probably having a little bit of a hard time from the conversion standpoint. We've been working with them for 10 years, but I don't disagree with you, and it's only just another huge pat on the back for them to be able to show those matrix, and
Yeah, and
that'd be
I
great.
recognize that, right? And,
Yeah.
but now we're becoming a hot commodity.
That's right.
So that's why I asked, like, in a specific time frame, understanding COVID is hitting in that part, and it's gonna impact those numbers, because quite frankly, there wasn't a lot of establishment going on, so that's
Sure,
okay.
sure.
But numbers 8 years ago and things like that, and I understand the closing of the opportunity, okay?
Yeah.
You have a long sales cycle.
Sure.
But with that in mind, it would be, I'm curious, and then also the types of retail.
Sure.
So is it predominantly restaurants? And then if so, what type, but also the style of retail? So for instance, having only lived here 2 years, I noticed that we have a lot of like the TJ Maxx or the Rosses and things like that, right? We don't have the Targets, we don't have the Kohl's and
Sure.
things like that. Probably demographics. And I recognize that, but I'm curious,
Sure.
right? And where the sweet spot is.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And so from a metric standpoint, we'll start tracking that. And I can go back a couple of years and we can go ahead and track that for you and get that to you. So restaurants are growing rapidly right now, more than anybody. We're seeing obviously fast food growth. You've seen that happen here, whether it's Chick-fil-A, Panda Express, some of the others that have come in. But really a focus that we've tried to focus on is two things: fast casual and casual sit-down restaurants, because that's the thing that we've heard from the beginning. We need more casual sit-down restaurants. I can't tell you how many people have told me we need a Red Lobster, we need an Olive Garden. You know, those might not be top of the list now, but in 2012 they were.
Well, and see, that's, not to interrupt you, but that's curious, okay?
Sure.
Because I live in the colony. So, but with that in mind, actually, I think it's changing.
Sure.
The sophistication of the individuals coming in, the amount of money they have, it's not only casual restaurants anymore. We're actually looking for nice restaurants too.
Yeah.
So it's, you know, in terms of adding another, no disrespect to anybody, burger joint, is, while it may be easy and attainable, do we actually need another burger joint?
Sure. So when I say casual sit-down restaurant, that's anything where you actually sit down and order with the waiter. So that's kind of what that level looks for there. So yeah, I mean, I think times have changed. I mean, your incomes continue to increase. As your incomes continue to increase, that opens you up for a higher caliber of restaurant. So my honest opinion, things are definitely headed in the right direction to hit those kind of benchmarks we're wanting to hit with types of retailers and restaurants. We're starting to have conversations. You mentioned some of those other retailers that you like to see here. We're now starting to have those conversations. So we're getting a lot closer, especially what's happened here too is people are working from home more than they have. Your daytime population has exploded. So you probably have noticed that. I stopped in town to eat at the Italian restaurant during lunch a couple of weeks ago. It was hopping, basically. It was crowded. So I think we're headed, all those things that you've mentioned, those types of retailers and restaurants, honestly, I think we're headed in that right direction. But we'll work on metrics and we can get you that.
I'd also like to mention too that to put a building on the ground, you have to have a plan development to do that. So we've been working very, very hard with developers to identify good developers to go into areas that will help create those pad site opportunities. And so that, you know, the last few years we've been working on all of that to be able to have spots to actually put all of these people that are interested. And so that's now starting to come to fruition and kind of lay itself out. So hopefully you guys will see some significant changes coming in the near future.
It's really important to note that, and all you have to do is pay attention on social media. There is a gambit of people, because there are some folks that do not want every chain restaurant. There are folks who really want the locally owned, the mom and pop, the unique style of dining, the unique cuisine experience. And there is also, and that is varying opinions of what people are looking for. What is not a varying opinion is the ability to move those people in their vehicles around town. So the transportation and the associated road grid and the known intersections where there's already an issue, that's strategically one of the things that council and EDC can work on together, because people are really not, there's an expectation that as those, to what Jean was saying, part of getting those pad sites available is for people to be able to get to them and from them without it being a complete gridlock, because then that's a part of their analysis of the site.
Absolutely, absolutely. So they're looking at all of those things, honestly. You know, I'm a big believer, local, I mean, if you're gonna be a successful retail community, you've gotta have a healthy mix of local, regional, and national prospects. They all play together. Those local businesses a lot of times need the draw that a national retailer has, and vice versa, and those sort of things. Y'all have a lot of that here. I mean, look at your downtown. I mean, I talk to communities all the time that would kill to have a downtown like Bastrop. So, no, from where we started 10 years ago to where we are now, it's completely, it's awesome to see. I mean, who would have thought Academy would have been here? In fact, people still call us and say, hey, tell us how Bastrop got Academy, and those sort of things. So those larger ones help the smaller ones, and vice versa. Having those larger retailers, that larger development, helps bring in those restaurants you're talking about. It's all about retail synergy and those sort of things.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
Is there, when you get to a point that we've reached here, to use Academy as a fairly recent new retailer, do other similar stores look and go, well, good enough for them?
Absolutely.
Market and, you know.
Absolutely. So we call that retail clustering. So retailers like to cluster. And, you know, if you think about it, I mean, it started way back when CVS would, if they saw Walgreens go into a site, CVS would locate across the street, and those sort of things. So, you know, hey, they've done the work. They've already done the research. They know if they can be successful here, we can. So we're seeing that already. You saw that with, you know, with Hobby Lobby and Academy. They all kind of cluster together and those sort of things. So, yeah, so the answer is yes. I mean, we see that, and I think we're going to continue to see that going forward.
All right, well, listen, thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
Enjoyed the presentation.
I have a motion to approve Resolution 2022-0004.
I second the motion.
All right, all those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries.
All right, thank you all. We appreciate it.
Thank you very much. All right, now we're on to 3.8, presentation, discussion, and possible action on Resolution R 2022-0005 of the Bastrop Economic Development Corporation authorizing the renewal of agreement with FiberLight LLC to maintain fiber in the Bastrop Business and Industrial Park.
Chairman Spencer and Board. In 2017, the BEDC funded the cost of 1 gig and 10 gig fiber in the Bastrop Business and Industrial Park. And the agreement was renewed in January of 2019 at a cost of $8,600 per month for a 36-month contract. The new cost for a 36-month contract will be $6,880, which is a difference in a savings of $20,640 per year. So your decision here is do you want to renew? I hope you do. It's providing the dark fiber in the industrial park through which internet services can be provided. And I was able to speak with your customer advocate last week. She really felt like the price was going to stay at $8,600, but we were able to negotiate down to a lower price.
That's really good. Just curious, is the 1 gig both up and down on the fiber?
That's a very good question, and I'm sorry I do not know the answer on that.
Okay. If it's fiber, it most likely is.
Well, it's referred to as dark fiber and not lit fiber, which means the dark fiber is not providing the actual services. Another company, it's just the vessel by which the services are delivered.
Okay. Jean, yeah?
No, go right ahead, please, because it's not.
So it's twofold. Right now, since we have implemented the dark fiber and run it to nodes through the park of the existing infrastructure, there is one end user that has gone in since then that actually is using FiberLight as a service provider. FiberLight has intentionally built the kind of trunk line, if you may, to allow for flexibility of use depending on the type of company that will be using it. They have, FiberLight does partner with a lot of the end users, AT&T, Spectrum, whomever, and so they can connect directly to that node that is already existing if they would like, using whomever for a service provider. So if AI is only using 1 gig and you've got, let's just use maybe Mocha as an example, since they're a much larger company doing financial technology, they may need 10 gigs. They have the ability to do that. Kind of, I'm just using that as a bold example. But they have that flexibility of different, basically, strings to take to each company and that flexibility. So they've taken it, just the trunk lines, and you can, if you would like, to use FiberLight as a service provider, or you can choose to use someone else.
Jean, can I just want to make sure I heard you right. Did you say there's one new user, or there's only one user in the entire park?
So right now, since we put it in, we've only had one new building go in, and that's AEI. And so yes, they used that because it was all going in at the same time, and they had it pulled to their building. That is our goal, is obviously any additional building that goes in, that they will use FiberLight and pull it to their building, and that way they're using the core foundation that's already existing.
But right now, as it stands today,
Correct.
there is one user in the park.
Yes, that is using FiberLight. Obviously,
Well,
everybody
for this
else. Yes.
contract, yeah.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
But FiberLight was the one that allowed Mr. Coughlin to have his.
Correct.
And Art, and, okay,
Yeah.
Art Foundation.
So basically, they're the infrastructure that's already put into
Correct.
that service. And then if somebody wants to purchase it, they can go whoever they want to, but they have to go through the FiberLight dark.
That is correct. Yep.
So I'll move to approve Resolution 2022-00005, however many zeros in a 5.
Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Right, okay, all in favor of resolution, say aye. Aye. All opposed? All right, the motion carries.
Thank you.
All right, 3.9, receive updates from the BEDC staff, Mocha Project.
Chair Spencer, you might turn on your mic.
Thank you. Yeah. All right, 3.9, we're going to receive updates from the BEDC staff on the Mocha Project, the sale of 921 Main Street building, industrial park infrastructure, workforce training and education, and the interim executive director's contract update.
I'm just going to make the announcement, and then you can talk. I'm very proud to say that the Mocha Project had our closing. I was not able to attend, but I understand it was quite a celebration. So the Mocha Project did close, and Jean and Angela were able to attend. So I've asked Jean to make a few comments, but they did close. Congratulations.
Yes, the Mocha team that you see there, they're wonderful people, and we're really excited about the opportunity from a workforce standpoint and having their company be here and grow literally from the ground up. They are currently located in our downtown on Main Street, and they have taken over the majority of this building, which is the old museum building at the far south end of Main Street. And they are already looking at trying to figure out how they're going to continue to grow, which is a great problem to have. So we are working with them not only on identifying some additional temporary space, but we're also working with them on workforce training opportunities. We're also already working with them on interconnecting with the school district to start some potential training programs within the high school level to bring those students out and put them to work at different levels. And so, again, just all around, the salaries that they're offering, the opportunity that they're offering, this community is just wonderful. So this picture here, and then Angela, they allowed us to ring their deal bell. So we were very excited to be there and be a part of that with them. Celebrate a great day. sorry, Beck. There we go.
Congratulations to the board and to the community for bringing a great business here, and I sincerely appreciate all the assistance. Jean and Angela, much of the work was done long before I came here, but there were some hoops we all had to jump through, and it was truly a team effort, and I sincerely appreciate the support from the staff in help bringing me up to date and helping me along with that project. For the sale of 921 Main Street building, we are very close to, and we do have a pending closing. There were some last-minute requests, and so we're responding to those, but we do anticipate a closing for that. On the industrial park infrastructure, we have signed a contract with Doucette, and they are moving forward. We anticipate that to go well. And I asked Jean to give an update on the workforce training.
I'll add one little piece to the industrial park infrastructure. We have our pre-development meeting scheduled with the city staff on Thursday afternoon at 3:30. So we're looking forward to kind of kicking that off and getting all of that working and moving forward. And Doucette has been working on some things until that time. And so we're trying to kind of knock some things off the checklist before we even kind of start. So really looking forward to getting that rolling and literally getting some dirt turning soon. So workforce training, again, working on the Youth Career Day. We've kind of, since we are including all kind of 3 age groups through the school district, I've worked with the school to kind of narrow down, like, what does that look like from a numbers standpoint? And we're looking at about 1,800 students. That is a lot of students, but I'm so excited because 900 of those are supposed to come from the elementary school. That is a pretty exciting thing to have the littles be a part of our bigger day. And so from the youngest, that's obviously our biggest number, and it literally goes down from there. We want the high school students that are there to be engaged in a part of what career opportunities look like. And so we're staying very focused on trying to, as Jen always points out, identifying those matrix, really kind of digging in and getting to the core numbers where we can actually measure success. So that's what we're looking at doing. We're all working collectively as a team to do that. We've got the Bastrop Chamber, we've got the Rural Workforce Solutions team, and of course Bastrop ISD, and I think we're up to about 5 people from Bastrop ISD that are currently involved right now. Obviously that number will get a lot bigger as we get closer. The other thing that we're going to be a part of is the, and my brain just went completely blank, and that was one item I did not write down, so please forgive me, but the youth, the youth summit that will actually be the day before our Youth Career Day. Thank you, Angela. Could not think of that. I wanted to say youth conference. It's close. So we will be participating in that as well. It's a different demographic and a different environment. And I think it will be really good for the EDC to be representing our industry and the community from a workforce standpoint to these youngsters as they're coming through and trying to learn of the opportunities that they have right here in their community. We also had a great call with Bastrop ISD and the Home Builders Association and David Weekley Homes to really identify opportunities for them to directly engage with our high school students that are involved in the construction trades program at Cedar Creek High School. They have promised us that they will develop and put together with their trade partners to come in and do 20 to 30-minute speeches to those classes for a month or whatever, kind of however we can carve up that time to make sure that we really give them a true perspective of what that industry, what it takes to work in that industry, who you have to work with, the types of tools, the types of certificates that you need, that sort of thing, and really give them that kind of one-on-one with everyone that's involved in that industry. The other thing that they're going to do too is David Weekley is going to put together a kind of hands-on, if you may, for the littles, for the middle school kids, to actually go out to the build sites, walk around the build site, ask questions, interact with the trades that are on site, and, with David Weekly specifically. And we're very excited to be partnered with them and working with them to achieve this on-the-job type training, even for our younger students who are trying to figure out what they want to do when they grow up. So that's really exciting. The other thing that, and I apologize, you guys, like I'm winded. We're also, again, working with Bastrop ISD on growing the internship and the mentorship program. They had 40 students go through the internship program last year. It was a huge success for the first year. We learned a lot. We are navigating a lot to make it better and bigger. Their goal right now is to have 45 students go through that program. And I kind of challenged them a little bit, because what that criteria is based off of is the funding aspect of it. So everyone understands these are paid internships, and the dollar amount is $16 an hour. If I am 17 years old and somebody is paying me $16 an hour, yes, please. I mean, that's a great wage for our high school students. And what they do is the school district has had some TEA grants that they paid with last year, and then the district kind of chipped in the rest of it. We're in conversations with TWC, which is the Texas Workforce Commission, as well as the Rural Workforce Solutions team. We'll be meeting with them this week to address some grant opportunities there. And if there is still a gap, but we're able to really maybe even look at something like doubling that number, then we may come back to the board and say, hey, we need to fill this little gap to get these kids out and into these internship programs. And maybe that's an opportunity for the board to have that discussion and see if we can participate and fill that gap for them. The ACC project, we are still waiting on the signed MOU. My understanding is that they did have a couple of questions. The city staff has addressed those, and now it's kind of back in ACC's hands for final approval. Fingers crossed we can get that going here pretty soon. Again, I am meeting with the Rural Workforce Solutions team, not only about the internship money, but we will also be discussing the scholarship opportunities for the ACC programs and the marketing, team marketing, to really get that out to the public and to the surrounding area to attract those students to get in those classes and have those be completely full. We're really looking forward to getting those launched. It's definitely been, a road worth waiting for, if you may. We're really looking forward to getting that marketing going and getting those students signed up. And hopefully the majority of those will be free of charge for the student. That's our goal. And then we are also working with, I think I shared a little bit of this with you guys last time, but I just want to, we're having ongoing conversations with the healthcare provider to really identify some workforce gaps that they are looking for. And so we can maybe partner with some of our educators that are already here that may have programs that align, may not be, a service tech type environment where they've got to have true healthcare, but more of the services industry portion, like the customer service, which is your literal front of the house person when you call a hospital. They're in desperate need. And so we're looking at maybe trying to loop some of the programs that we've already built for other industries to maybe modify that a little bit specifically for the healthcare industry. So we're really excited to be working with them on that and really kind of looking at that a little bit differently for today to at least get something started and in the works to, have that kind of leeway to start building some other programs. We would like to look at some, x-ray techs and surgical techs. Those are all things that are, extremely important and critical. I'm sure you guys have heard in the news, between Ascension and HCA, all of these big hospitals are putting a lot of money on the ground in the Austin region. Everybody's growing. You've got to have that healthcare system. And so we want to position ourselves as Seton starts to look at that expansion opportunity. How can we support them to have the workforce ready to go when they're ready to expand?
Jean, one question. In conversations that I've had with Jace Jones and some other in the healthcare area, it's also my understanding, and I may not be saying it, the phlebotomy, the blood draw.
Yes.
There's a big need for that, and that's a pretty low level. If you love needles and don't mind the blood, there's a big need for that, and that certification's fairly easy. So I didn't know if that was an area as well.
So the school district is working with them on that portion because that is a certification that you can actually get through your high school students. And so we're trying really hard not to focus on things that are already in the works. We're looking at things that are outside of the scope of either what the school district is doing or what Smithville's looking at that are truly long-term impactful. And one of the discussions that we had with the Seton staff was that customer service aspect. It's not just healthcare. It's not just retail restaurants, right? Like every business in the community needs that opportunity. And so we're trying to really kind of build a base that we can grow other programs around, and they are actually working on helping to define, say for the surgical techs, okay, what do we actually need from them to put people, whether it's an upskilling, is that where we're maybe missing, where they're maybe missing kind of they've got a gap, and they've got people who have the talents, but they're maybe missing one piece. Is it an opportunity for us to teach the full curriculum, or do we just need to kind of plug in that gap? And so they're helping us to define really what that true need is, and it'll probably take us a little bit. So we're looking at, what does that picture look like, because we have to define it before we can start doing it. So, and then, who do we bring in from a partner aspect to make those things happen? So that's what we're working on. I hope that all of that made sense. It was a lot, so.
Well, thank you very much.
Absolutely.
Good update, good update.
And then,
All right. Well, it is now time for one
I have
more.
one more item, yes. Under my contract with the BEDC, I'm required to give you 5 days' notice upon termination of my contract. I want to thank this board. You are some of the most talented, selfless volunteers I have ever had the privilege to work with. And I have very mixed emotions about resigning. I see so much promise in this community, but there are some things that I have chosen to remove myself from being or not to be associated with. I do want to thank Catherine Nash. I think she is a righteous woman who served well her community for many years, and I'm very saddened by the way she was treated. These are my feelings, and they are part of the reason that I'm resigning, and I will present my letter of resignation to you, Mr. Chair, and my reasons are noted in that letter. I also want to thank the staff, Angela and Jean. I've enjoyed working with Charlie Zeck. I had the opportunity to work with him in another community, and I've thoroughly enjoyed working with he and his firm. Allison Bastian Rodriguez has been wonderful to work with and extremely responsive to everything we've asked her to do on 921 Main and any other contract or real estate project we've dealt with. Again, I want to thank this board, but I sincerely want to thank Angela and Jean. They have done a yeoman's job on every project I've worked with them on. Jean has a rapport with her, with the prospects that come to this community, and she develops that relationship very quickly. She's very thorough in her presentations of what this EDC does. She knows the steps of vetting a project, and she is very thorough in her vetting process and very straightforward. She represents this board and this corporation very well, in my opinion. Angela keeps the most outstanding records of any manager I have ever seen. She has a great wit about her and can diffuse a tense situation better than anyone I've ever been around. Again, she does research. She's outstanding in her job, and I feel like both women are treasures and assets to this organization. I thank you all for the opportunity of a lifetime, and I wish you well, and I will be praying for your community.
Kind of sad to see you go there. We have enjoyed you being interim director.
Thank you. It's been an honor.
Okay, well, if there's another further on the agenda, then it is number, where are we, 5? Yeah, 5. It is 7:19 on Monday, February the 28th, and I move for an adjournment.
So moved.
Second?
Second, his second, yeah.
All right, we are adjourned.
We're adjourned.